Hello, my name is Alec. This is my channel, Alec Reads. Welcome back, or welcome to, if you're new. For this chapter, I do want to put a little bit of a trigger warning. It does mention blood and some very in-depth mentions of panic attacks, and overall, it can get pretty dark. So if you do not like those things, or if those things trigger you, then please make sure to take care of yourself and click off of the video. Anyway, once again, you can always put recommendations in the comments. This is chapters 5 and 6 of I Still Think You're Beautiful. So let's jump right in. Chapter 5, Draco. I woke up to the sound of screaming. I slowly sat down and looked around. Potter was going through his trunk like a madman, panting hard. I got up from my bed as he sat on the floor, his head between his legs, struggling to breathe. "Harry?" I asked. Wait, I just said his first name. I coughed as he sat against the wall. "Potter, you okay?" I corrected myself. He obviously wasn't, but I didn't know what else to say. I'm fine. Just a nightmare," he said between each heavy breath. "What are you looking for?" I stared at his open trunk, everything chucked on the floor. "My book. It calms me down." I walked over to his trunk and looked at the mess on the floor. I couldn't see this book he was on about. "Maybe you didn't pack it." Potter was shaking his head now. He looked like he was going to pass out. I sat next to him, rubbing his back as he started to cry. "What was it about? The dream?" He swallowed his tears. "Everyone." I knew what he meant. He didn't have to explain, but he tried. "It's all my fault," he cried. He leaned into me as I put my arm around him. Was I hugging him? I don't know. "What do you mean?" His breathing slowed as he pulled away from me. He stood up, his t-shirt soaked in sweat. As he stood up, I saw his arm had bandages on it. "Potter, what happened to your arm?" He looked at me shocked before heading straight for the bathroom, locking the door. I could hear his breathing even though I sat on by the window. I walked over to the door. Knocking, I heard him turn on the shower. Even with the sound of the shower, I could hear his sobs. My heart was breaking, literally. He'd been through so much and had no one there for him. Yet, still, he tried to act like everything was okay. I remembered back to the train, how tired he looked, but smiling. I tried to force the door open. "Potter, open the door. I need to make sure you're okay." The door didn't open, so I went and got my wand. "Alamora." The door clicked open. There was a bandage on the floor, lines of blood streaked across it. I stepped inside, walking towards the shower. Harry was fully clothed, his head under the water, standing up, and his hand on the wall in front, holding him up. Blood was dripping from his arm, turning the water pink. "Potter, what the hell?" He didn't look at me, just turned the shower off and leant against the wall, sighing. "It's all my fault," he said, his voice raspy. "What?" I edged closer. "They all died because of me." He looked at me, his green eyes flooded and rubbed red. "Potter, what are you talking about? None of what happened was your fault. It was all Voldemort." Harry sighed, almost laughing. "Everyone would be alive if I had never been born. None of this would have happened. My parents would be alive." I walked closer, wanting him to heal his dripping arm. Then they wouldn't be your parents. Please, Potter, just let me bandage your arm up. I took another step closer and took his other arm, pulling him out of the shower. I put a towel around him and dabbed a smaller one on his arm. The cuts were so deep. He didn't wince at all. He seemed to be in a trance. Don't heal them, please, he begged. I nodded. I didn't know what else to do. Why did you do this? He didn't reply. I got some clean bandages and covered his arm up, careful not to hurt him. He would have shown it anyway. His face was a rigid stone. I led him out of the bathroom and put him in his bed. He curled up and scrunched his face up, holding his pillow. I knelt down beside the bed, face to face with him, his eyes closed. Harry, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'll always be here if you want me. He kept his eyes closed. I stood up and turned around. His hand clasped into mine. Squeezing it, he replied, "Thank you, Draco." He let my hand go, and his breathing slowed as he went back to sleep. I stayed awake all night. When I woke up the next morning, I looked around the room. Harry was already gone. His trunk tidied up. A book was on his bed. This was obviously the book he had been looking for last night. I opened the first page. A woman with red hair and Harry's green eyes was hugged by a man who looked just like Harry apart from his eyes. His parents. I flicked through a bit more. A wedding photo caught my eye. Harry's father was waving at me, the untidy black hair that Harry had inherited standing up in all directions. His mother's arm in arm with his dad, and next to his dad was a young man, Sirius Black, Harry's godfather. I closed the book and got changed, walking down the great hall for breakfast. As I heard the doors, I turned the corner, bumping into someone. Hermione Granger stared up at me as I knocked her onto the floor. I held out my hand to her. She was carrying some books in one hand. "Sorry," I said, smiling down. She took my hand gingerly, and I pulled her up. "It's fine, Malfoy." She dropped one of her books, and I bent down to pick it up. "There you go," I said cheerfully. I thought about Harry. I had to tell someone. She was his friend, after all. "Can I talk to you about something?" I asked, wondering if she'd take me seriously. Yeah, sure." She carried on walking anyway from the great hall, and I followed her. "What is it?" "It's about Harry." Her eyebrow raised a bit. "You know I share a room with him, right?" She nodded. "Do you like him?" "'Cause I wouldn't judge you if you did, but you should tell him, not me." What was she on about? Harry's gay? What? He's gay? I hadn't realized. I was going red. "Yeah, he told me 'cause I kept pestering him on why he's broken up with Ginny, so if you want to ask him out, ask him out." "What? Wait, no, that's not what I wanted to talk to him about." Hermione stopped and turned around. "He's been having nightmares. He woke up screaming, and when I went to see if he was okay, he ran to the bathroom and turned on the shower. I unlocked the door and his arm. It had cuts all over it. He thinks all of this is his fault. All the people that died." Hermione leant against the wall, looking as if she was going to cry. "Why didn't he tell anyone?" "I don't know. I haven't seen him this morning, have you?" She shook her head. "Well, keep an eye out. I'm worried about him." I meant what I said. If you want to ask him out, ask him out. She pulled a weak smile and ran off to her previous destination, the library. "I think I will." Chapter 6. Harry. I'd woken up early to avoid seeing Malfoy and everyone else. I didn't go to the Great Hall breakfast. I didn't really eat breakfast anymore. So I went to the room of requirement and was greeted by our old DA training room. I wandered in and closed the door behind me. I took my wand out of my pocket and practiced some small spells. Nostalgia swarmed over me like a tsunami of emotions. I thought of all my happy memories, but they all turned dark, ruined by death. Though one of the youngest wizards to ever be able to, I found that I couldn't cast Adrius. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks as I dropped to the floor and thought of all the memories and mischief that had happened in this room, not to mention the bravery. How everyone stood up to Umbridge and the insequel squid, how we rebelled against those the next generation deemed untrustworthy and dangerous. We fought back. And in the end, all that led to was death. Looking around at all the dirty, spotted mirrors, I dropped the glamour spell. Taking my shirt and jacket off, revealing the countless old scars on my back from Voldemort. The words embedded in my hand from Umbridge. The other countless random scars I had on my body inflicted by Death Eaters or Quidditch. And obviously, my famous lightning bolt, which for some reason was unaffected by a glamour spell. My eyes followed my arm in the mirror, bandaged so carefully, it was hard to get off. Thanks to Malfoy, I stared in disgust and contempt at my arm. Why am I so damaged? Why did all this have to happen to me? These questions are always left unanswered. My cuts started to open, so I replaced the bandage, not as neatly as Malfoy did. I gulped. He knew now. He'd probably go and tell his friends about how broken Potter is. And it's true, I am. Some days I just want to give up, and I come to this close to raising my wand to my head and saying a few simple words. But then I think about all the things I have to live for. A short list, I can assure you, but I wouldn't want to look like a coward. And I didn't want to upset Hermione or Ron. He'd already lost one brother too many. I sat there for a couple of hours, in complete silence, before chucking my shirt on again. Along with a spell I could so easily perform now. It was like breathing. I tied my jacket around my waist, walked slowly out of the room, closing the disappearing doors. I walked in the direction of the common room to get my books. If I was going to bunk off, I might as well do my homework. It would have been potions lesson now. First lesson since Snape. I was still conflicted about my emotions toward him. I hadn't the time to dwell on it. I walked up the steps to my shared room and thought about how he'd been supposedly protecting me this whole time, and was a bit of a shock once I'd learned why. I was grateful to him. I'm going mad, I swear, grateful to a dead man who does that. I grabbed the books I needed and headed to the library. I got there soon enough and sat down, my eyes rereading the same page over and over again, not taking in any information whatsoever. I couldn't do any work like this, so I returned to my room and grabbed my photo album, flipping through it to the most recent ones. The photos of my own memories. My anxiety settling a bit. There was me, my first year at Hogwarts, and Ron laughing and eating sweets. Hermione, me, and Ron talking about how we defeated the troll. I remember Dean taking it. We smiled immediately after the flash, leering in our eyes. There were a couple more of my two best friends and me. There was one I had taken of Ron and Hermione in 6th year. She was asleep, resting on Ron, a book resting on her, moving up and down in time with her breathing, Ron smiling in admiration. They'd told me that they were going out after the war. They deserve their happiness. I wish I could have something like that. I wish I could be with someone and call them my home. I flicked past them to a picture of me, about to fly off on my broom. I think Hermione took this one, as Ron was next to me, also in Quidditch gear, holding his broom. I put my book away and rummaged through my trunk, my fingers pricked by the twings of a broom. I grabbed my firebolt. I hadn't rode it in years, literally, and practice ran to the Quidditch field, jumping on my broom. I shot through the sky, letting the air blow all the fears away. For a while, at least. I'd forgotten how exhilarating it was. It was what I'd missed most about Hogwarts, amongst other things. I stopped mid-air, about 50 feet, and then leaned back, balancing on my broom. Breathed in the evening air, the sun just setting through the castle's turrets. With the light shining in my face, I closed my eyes. My jacket blowing in the wind, my deep-set shoulders balancing me on the broom. The soft breeze ruffling my hair even more than it already was. Everyone would be returning to their dorms now, or going to the feast. I had no idea what the time was. Closing my eyes turned out to be not a great plan. I fell asleep, my nightmares creeping up on me, 50 feet in the air. About half an hour later, I'm not exactly sure, and it doesn't really matter. I jumped awake and soon realized I was falling, my broom getting smaller and smaller above me. I didn't have time to register what was going on, though my body crashed onto the pitch below, my broom still floating patiently in the air. And that is the end of chapter 6. Once again, these next couple chapters are going to be mentioning mental health problems, so just trigger warnings for the next couple of chapters. So just letting everyone know, good morning, good night, or good afternoon, and I love you, ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between. Have a good day, or night, or morning, or afternoon. I will see you in the next video. Bye. Have a great day.